Hey, welcome back to Flight C'est La Vie. I'm Anglo, your pilot and guide, so stay close, because we're going places. No, literally, to the different regions of Quebec. And we got a good one today. A Canadian classic, Montreal. We're going to be talking mental health with some of the city's experts and activists to discuss how we can all maintain our own mental well-being, which is very important, and support those of the people around us as well. T'es prêt? Let's go.
En contre-attaque. Le tir est là.
Who is it? Who are you? This is the cockpit. It's pilots only. Sorry. You seem cool. You can stay. But don't tell anyone else you're up here. Welcome to the Dre. Le nid d'écureuil. Oh, how rude of me. Let me introduce you to someone very special. My co-pilot, Captain Franco Renard. Hey, salut mon gros. C'est moi Franco, le pilote pro rigolo en kimono. Enchanté. Okay, don't mention anything about the kimono. Trust me, it's better to just let it slide. Écoute bien là. Combien de fois il faut que je te dise? Je suis black belt en flight, top sensei, point final. It's true, Franco was actually one of the best stunt pilots of his time. Hey, Frank, you still got it? Je pensais que t'allais jamais me demander. Check donc des skills. Frank. Woo! Vive le Québec! Oh, ça fait du bien. Okay, promise me we'll never do that again. Hey, t'as-tu vu l'oratoire Saint-Joseph? No, I was trying to hold on for dear life. But I guess that means we must be close. Oh yeah, there's Mount Royal. Montréal. Quelle ville ça coche. J'ai grandi là et j'ai passé plein de soirées à en partir ça go. Le premier chose que je vais faire après lockdown, sais-tu c'est quoi? Les tam-tams. Oh, of course, the Tams. Every Sunday in the summer, the drums just draw you in from blocks around. And where there's a beat, there's a crowd. Good times. Montreal's just such a social city with a lot going on, which is partly why it's been hit so hard by COVID. And it's tough because there's so many students who live there. And when you have all these young people who are used to running around all cooped up in their 2.5s, I mean, there's just gonna be some mental health challenges. Hey, c'est tellement plate ça! Vraiment là. Which is why we wanted to check in with our friends over there to firstly just see how they're doing, but also to hear some of their opinions on how we can take care of our mental health generally, but especially during these tough times. I can't wait for Montreal to get its heartbeat back though. Franco, you got anything? Lâche pas la patate les amis, ça va pas être trop long. On va réussir. On est capable parce qu'enfin, c'est nous, les vivants. Ok, maintenant vous m'avez remonté. J'ai si faim que j'ai l'estomac dans les talons. C'est quoi le bouffe d'avion aujourd'hui, enfin? All right, we got peanut butter dumplings. Okay, you're not going to believe this, but apparently they were invented in Montreal. Check it out for yourself. Anyway, eat that quick, because we're about to land. Take us home, Frank. Bien reçu, 10-4. Bienvenue à Montréal. Allez, Montréal, allez, Montréal, allez, Montréal. Allez, 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 Montréal. On est bien à la maison. Thanks, Cap. We're going to take the metro over to meet our guests, all right? We'll meet you back here when we're done. Ciao, ciao for now. Amusez-vous. All right, first we have a doctor. I know, we're getting pretty fancy already. She's a psychologist and executive director of Aery, Quebec, a Montreal-based organization that helps people live better lives despite mental health challenges. To get us started on the right track, let's find out how Ella Amir defines mental health. Hi, Ella.
Hello, very nice to be here.
So nice to have you on. To start us off on the right track, let's jump right in and get our definition straight. So from a professional perspective, what is mental health?
Well, this is not my invention, but this is really the common understanding or the common description of mental health as being the need for an emotional, psychological, and social well-being. And as we do know, these affect how people think, how they feel, and how they act or how they behave. And I think that it's really interesting that there is such a heightened interest right now in mental health, and it's a good thing. But, it really happened because we are all facing so many adversities that we have not faced ever in our lives. So I think that it really compels us to pay more attention to mental health. And I think that in that sense, it's probably a positive thing.
I assume you're referring to the pandemic. How has it affected people's lives?
Right. I think that people were very preoccupied with how to go through it and stay alive. As time went by, I think that people started to develop this anxiety that, okay, they're alive, but they can't really leave the house. They can't socialize with their friends. They can't hug their loved ones. They can't really do many things that have been part of their routine. And this is something that is not easy to accept. This is why we are saying, first of all, you have to recognize what's happening. Then the second step is accepting it. And then maybe the third step is really to think, okay, so what can we do? How can we decrease the negative? How can we mitigate the negative consequences of this uncalled for, pandemic?
As bad as it is, does the pandemic present any opportunities?
I think that there is a tendency to think that this is an absolute disaster. And again, in many ways, it is a very difficult situation, especially because we have never dealt with this kind of situation. And also because we really don't know yet how we are going to get through it and how we are going to basically, go back to what we have been accustomed to, to our daily routine. But I think that once you're thinking about it and once you are learning how to try to mitigate these negative consequences, I think that there are some opportunities here that we can try to learn from. And I think that one of the opportunities is really to have an opportunity to reflect on what is important for you. What are your priorities? We have been living in a very certain culture and society that compels us to behave in certain ways, and very often without really thinking too deeply about what it means. We live in a very consumer-oriented society. Is this really that important? Again, when push comes to shove, what is more important? What is less important? So I think that this pandemic may help us, I hope it does, to sit down and really reflect on our life, on what we want from our life, how we want to proceed, what is important, and as I say, what can be considered less important.
And does the shutdown affect young people differently?
Well, it's a very good question. I believe that it was CBC, or there was some sort of a survey that journalists went and asked people on the street, young and older, if 2020 was the worst year in their life. And not surprising to me, most of the young people said, yes, absolutely, it was the worst year of our life. And many of the older people say, no. And I think that it makes very good sense to me. You see, when a 16 years old missed his graduation and can't meet with his friends, it is a tragedy. And indeed, it really is very difficult. But when you are older and you have had some opportunities to deal with adversities, you also have had an opportunity or opportunities to address them better or not so well, but at least it's not the first time that you are faced with adversities. So I think that, as a big generalization, young people may have less tools and less life experience that could really help them to go through that without feeling that this is a disaster. So I think that generally speaking, I do think that it may be more difficult on young people.
What advice would you offer to anyone experiencing mental health challenges?
I think that you really have to be careful not to pathologize every anxiety or every symptoms of depression that we are feeling. It is important to normalize it. To first of all recognize that we live in a very difficult time that none of us have ever experienced before. So, we have to cut ourselves some slack. This comes with a territory. So allow ourselves, I have an 89 years old friend, and a few weeks ago, she was really down, but she couldn't accept it. She couldn't fathom that she's not going to feel well. And she really had pretty good reasons to feel unwell. I told her, listen, just accept that it's okay to have some days that you don't feel well. I think that just recognizing it and accepting it already may make you feel a little better, because you just accept it, that, you are a little nervous, you're a little anxious, you are, whatever the case is. Don't try not to pathologize everything and medicalize everything, because it's really not necessary. And I think that it's counterproductive.
Right. I guess you could say that these negative feelings are part of the full and normal range of human emotions.
Entirely.
Yeah.
But you see, I think that, and I think that this pandemic really confronted us with all kind of new truth. Usually, us human beings living with a sense that we have control over our life. And I think that, yes, to some extent, we absolutely have control. But there are many things that we don't have control over. And I think that this pandemic came and hit us in the face and basically said, ha, 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 you have no control. And I think that we have a hard time accepting it. Mm-hmm. And I think that this is really an opportunity, really just to reflect and really recognize that we have control over our own life, mm-hmm. or over our decision, or over our behavior. This we have control over. But we have very limited control over many other things, such as what other people are thinking about mm-hmm. us, mm-hmm. or what, we can do now because of the pandemic, and so on and so forth. And I think that it does make you humble. If you accept it, I think that it makes you humble. And I think that it can reduce the anxiety level.
And it seems like accepting whatever's happening opens up possibilities for healing and growth.
I agree. Look, and especially given that we have no control over it, it is what it is. We might as well look at it as an opportunity really to sort out our priorities. And I think that it is an opportunity. With all the difficulties, I think that it's also an opportunity. And I do believe, I certainly hope that people will continue to reflect post-pandemic, because I think that, it really confronts you again with what is important, mm-hmm. what is less important, what is it that you want to invest your, energy in. And I think that this is important. And honestly, I really do hope that we are not going to go back to exactly where we were coming from, mm-hmm. that we really will have a little bit more conscientious input into mm-hmm. what we are doing and why we are doing whatever we do.
Well, Ella, this has been very instructive. Do you have any final words to send us off?
There is no health without mental health. It's important to recognize that, because I think that it's very clear when we are talking about health, very often we are thinking about physical health, but there are really two components which are interrelated, and one affects the other. And I think that it's really important to promote and to sustain our mental health in exactly the same way that we do that with our physical health.
Amazing. There is no health without mental health. Thanks, Ella.
You're very welcome.
Next is a young person at the front lines of mental health activism in Montreal. Divya Aery is a student in her final year at Concordia, and she's also behind a number of social awareness initiatives, namely Project Vive and Casa Cares. On top of all that, she's a speaker at Jack.org, a national organization dedicated to revolutionizing ideas and practices around mental health. Really happy she found some time to share with us to discuss this topic that is clearly so important to her. Divya, thanks for joining me.
Hi, how are you? Thank you so much for having me.
It's my pleasure. Not to jump right in, well, actually, to jump right in, what inspired you to get involved in mental health activism in the first place?
You know what? I wish I can tell you with one straight answer, but there are so many reasons as to why I get involved. Just mental health affects so many people, and there's so much stigma surrounding the topic where not a lot of people realize when they're struggling with their mental health. I know personally I've struggled. A lot of people close to me have struggled with their mental health, and it's always been something that has not been taken seriously in my culture. And with my personal struggles, I realized that this is not just me, but it's everyone around me who has struggled with their mental health. 1 out of 4 Canadians will struggle with their mental health and have a mental illness in any given year, but not even all of them get the help that they need. So we always think at Jack, especially the nonprofit that I'm a part of, not a lot of people get that help. And that really pushed me to get involved and just start public speaking and telling people that their mental health is okay, like struggling with their mental health is okay, and that there's help out there.
You mentioned your personal struggle. And like you said, it's everyone who experiences difficulties. And as you know, sharing is a great way to destigmatize. So if you don't mind, could you talk a little more about what you went through?
Yeah, definitely. So I think one of the biggest things that I want to mention before answering that question is everyone's struggle is so different and it's impacted by so many factors. And one of the biggest factors for me was culture, but also just the fact, and I think that a lot of listeners can agree with this, Montreal is so diverse. The English-speaking population of Montreal is so diverse, and everyone comes from such different backgrounds, different upbringings, different environments. So my personal experiences may not even be applicable to a lot of other people. However, the beauty of talking about mental health and advocating for mental health is even though all of our experiences are different, we are all struggling and we can all relate on what it's like to struggle with our mental health. So for me personally, growing up, I think I had this mentality that struggling with your mental health is weak. I do come from an Indian background culture. And with that, it was difficult for me when I started struggling with my mental health because I didn't want to talk about it. And I didn't think it was okay to talk about it because physical health was always more of an issue than mental health. And what made it difficult for me was that I wasn't able, or I felt like I should not be getting the help that I wanted. But on top of that, I didn't recognize right away that I was struggling. So a big part of this is just the lack of knowledge plays a big role in understanding when you're struggling with your mental health. So I was not even aware. I didn't comprehend what I was going through, but I knew that I was not feeling well. So I was never diagnosed with anything because I did not receive any help. However, I wish that I did. What ended up helping me was talking to a friend eventually when it became too difficult for me. However, that is one of the biggest reasons as to why I try to push myself in addition to my culture that impacted everything.
Are there accessible support services or resources for English speakers in the city?
There are resources available in Montreal, even for English speakers, but most people think of resources as being the one-on-one counseling that you have to pay $100 per hour for. But resources is not just that, and resources cover just about anything. A lot of them can be free. Some of them can be anonymous online. Some can be through the telephone, and some can be just really your best friend or just a friend, a stranger, or a trusted adult. So resources really range from a bunch of different things, and it just isn't just having your typical psychologist across the room.
So we have a surprise guest with us. It's Geneviève from Jack.org, the aforementioned nonprofit doing amazing work to empower youth like Divya to take the lead on mental health. Geneviève, does that sound about right?
Yeah, I mean, you really hit the nail on the head there. Jack.org is definitely a national charity that works all across the country, really to empower youth to become leaders and revolutionize the mental health landscape. And so we work in every province and territory. We empower youth. We offer them mental health training, resources, funding, swag, you name it. We probably give it to them. And so there are quite a few different programs that our youth can be involved in. So we've got our chapters program, those youth-led groups within schools or community organizations or centers, so you don't have to be a student to start a chapter or to be involved in one. We've got our talks program, so you can become a trained certified speaker to deliver mental health presentations within schools, within communities, and also just to kind of gain more of those foundational mental health skills that help you in those everyday interactions and conversations when you're supporting someone in your life. We've got online resources, our bethere.org, which is all about learning those skills I mentioned and that Divya was talking about as well, with really knowing how we can be there to support someone in our lives who might be struggling and how we can respond in that situation, developed with that kind of person in mind. So you can actually check out that website. It's just called dosomething.org. And there are a few different initiatives that are listed there that are tailored to be run by, one person on their own, maybe a pair of people, a group, however many people you want. And it really just takes you through the initiative. And so that way you can still make a difference and be involved in the mental health landscape.
Amazing. So definitely check out jack.org and get involved because it's important that we face this issue collectively. On that note, and to cap us off, Divya, would you mind sharing some advice on how young people should consider or treat their mental health?
Definitely. I think one thing that I just need to say right now for all the listeners, COVID has hit us hard, and even beyond COVID, all of us have a mental health. 5 out of 5 of us have a mental health that needs to be taken care of. Everyone's mental health is very important, and I really would like for all listeners to just really think of yourselves and love yourselves, So I think that's something that I personally struggled with, and that impacted my mental health in the past as well. So just remember to consider your mental health and how important it is. What I would advise is not for everyone to start researching what mental health is and try to figure out all the ins and outs of it, but try to get a little bit of a base understanding. What's the difference between mental health and mental illness? What does it look like when you're not doing well? What does it look like when, what are things that help you and boost your self-esteem? What are things that bring you confidence? So try to understand you and your emotions and how you react to certain situations. So I'm saying a lot of self-reflection, to be honest, because once you do that, you're able to understand why something has bothered you and what you can do about it. And if you are in a position where you may be struggling with your mental health and you think that you fall under that, so you're seeing changes in your behaviors, it's been a while, your thoughts and feelings are becoming more negative. If you've noticed these, or if you've noticed that you're more in a crisis where you might hurt yourself or hurt someone else, definitely look into the resources that are available to you. Once again, there are so many resources that range from just your trusted adult and friend all the way to having those paid psychological services. So there's so many different resources out there. Definitely look out. I know it's difficult and it's not easy, but just don't give up because, I wish at the time that I had reached out for the help that I needed. And if I had done that, I'm sure that things would have been different for me back then. And at the same time, I was that trusted friend, an adult that someone else was able to speak to. And I saw the changes that I made in that person's life. So not only do you have the power to help yourselves, but you have the power to help others, but that starts from you. So my advice is just really love yourselves and work on, finding those resources that are available for you and never giving up. So that's a little long, but just know that it's okay not to be okay and to not give up.
Great suggestions there. And if you'd like to hear more, Divya is actually launching her own podcast soon. What's the name so people can look out for it?
It's called Heart to Heart with Divya, and the episodes will start to be released in December. So look out for that. A little subtle plug-in for myself here, but and my first 2 episodes are actually all about mental health. So my role is really just to spread awareness and get people to be involved any way possible.
Very cool. Divya, it's been great to have you on, and please keep up the good work.
Thank you so much, and I'm so glad that you're doing this. I think it's such an important topic. So thank you also for going out of your way to talk about, the English population of Montreal. We are the minority, so it's really great to see you reaching out and letting us know, that our mental health matters.
Akshay Grover is a student who produced a great film on mental health. Living Books features Montrealers who candidly share their journey with mental illness. Let's talk to him to see what led him to make this film and what he learned in the process. Akshay, how's it going?
Hey, I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm well. I'm happy to have you on to talk about Living Books. I was curious, what caused you to make the film in the first place?
It really started out as a thing for fundraisers and other people's causes. And I was always, I would use my filmmaking as a platform for things I cared about. And I just kind of kept doing that. And this thing came along, and it happened to be both something I cared about and was like they were directly asking for a film project. So it was a cause I cared about a lot, which is mental illness that's affected my family personally. And it was kind of intertwined with this. It was 2 interests that kind of intertwined together, and I was very passionate about it. So it was a lucky opportunity, right time, right place. I just happened to be at that level at that time, and they really encouraged me. And the thing was, the people who hired me, they really let me go where I wanted with it. So there's a lot of creative freedom involved with it.
That's great. And did you pick up any insights on mental health through the production process?
So the film kind of structured in a way where it's this longer narrative that takes over a year. So you see the seasons change, and there's this one narrator who interludes the entire film with different periods of his life. So we could see that it's a process. And like, that's what I was trying to portray in the film. mental health is a process. Like you start from one place and the years go by and you don't really know it, but life's unfolding. And that's what I learned the most is that you build up this experience, and every time you go to things, it's a little bit easier and a little bit better to you're more prepared. There's a lot of pitfalls. There's a lot of things that make us crave this kind of immediate gratification, and that immediate gratification doesn't exist in the world of mental health. These emotions are temporary and they're fleeting, but it's hard to know that when you're in psychosis or you're in a crisis.
So I have a couple clips from the movie that I thought spoke to the subtleties of mental illness. The first one is from Chris, a young man who struggled with eating as a way to cope with anxiety. Here it is.
I get like days where I'm just down. I don't want to go to the gym. I don't want to do anything. But you have to realize that, and I have to tell myself that, those days are fleeting. Those are moments, the moments like that where I just want to quit. I don't want to quit working out. I don't want to quit on myself. I just want to stop feeling bad, and that's temporary. The feeling of those negative feelings that you get, that's temporary.
Yeah, so Chris is Chris is very relatable, very inspiring guy. His whole thing is, you see the pictures of when he was obese and he was 300 pounds, and you see him as a bodybuilder now, and he has such incredible mental strength to go through that, and he just went through an incredible journey. And you look at the guy and it's like, man, that guy must be the strongest person And then in the film, he still talks about how there's good days and bad days, and there's still the ups and downs, and you're kind of surprised at that. That was kind of what we were talking about before, how this society we're in, which is filled with immediate gratification, that can't coexist with proper mental health. It's when I look at Chris and I hear his stories, and when I hang out with Chris, because he and I are good friends, I see that process and I see where commitment gets you. But when we don't want to feel bad, like we just want to keep feeling good, that's kind of counterproductive, because if you want to invest in this process, going to the gym and running will change your state completely. The people who kind of are in on this, who do a lot of physical activity, feel like they're kind of in on the secret that kind of solves things for them. And it's not that if you go for a run or go to the gym every day will be good. It's a process, just like everyday life.
Let's hear another clip from Russell, a man who I thought made a good analogy for the symphony of mental chatter. I could explain, but let's hear it from him.
It's like the mind is a symphony, and those positive messages are happening all the time. But let's say they're the strings in the symphony. They're soft, and the horns of attack are blaring out all the time, so you can't even hear them. But then once they pierce through, the symphony gets tuned, and you start to have a more or less normal mixture of positive and negative thoughts depending on what's going on in the day, not just a low that goes on forever.
I really love speaking to Russell, and I actually met him at an event called Living Books, where this organization in the West Island called the Omega Center. They're a day center for people suffering from mental illness. They actually had this event at Concordia, and it was titled Living Books, and students could rent out a book, which was these people who were sharing their stories, and one of them was Russell. So I spoke to him, and right away he stood out as this sort of philosopher. He actually had studying that. He was just so well spoken, and he kind of talks about how your mind knows everything good and bad about you, and it could be your enemy or your greatest asset. And he kind of likens these negative thoughts to these horns, these blaring horns, and stuff that is good for you is kind of on the B side. I guess it's just about listening to that voice more and more, listening to that version of you that wants you to succeed.
Well, Akshay, really appreciate you stopping by, and we can't wait to see what you do next.
Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Et après la liberté fut la fruition. Ce sont les mots que l'on retrouve sur la couverture de la collectif d'artistes Fruition. On va parler avec deux des membres du collectif, Naika Champagne, qui est notre artiste du jour, et son ami Kat, qui nous expliqueront d'où est née cette belle initiative. Salut Naika. Salut Kat.
Salut.
Merci d'être là aujourd'hui. Pour commencer, s'il te plaît, dites-nous, Fruition, c'est quoi et pourquoi?
Donc, Fruition, c'est tellement drôle de dire ce mot-là en français, excusez.
Ouais.
Fruition, c'est un collectif pour et par personnes qui sont queer, trans, non-binaires, noirs, afro-autochtones, autochtones et les personnes de couleur, personnes racisées. Et quand on dit pour et par, c'est que donc les membres font partie de cette communauté-là. Et aussi que la communauté dans laquelle qu'on fait nos ateliers dans le cours, c'est pour cette communauté-là aussi. Et quand je dis atelier, c'est vraiment un terme large. Donc, on offre un espace, et un espace qui n'est pas nécessairement juste physique, on aimerait ça, là, mais ce n'est pas le cas en ce moment, puis c'est aussi COVID. Donc, non. Mais dans le fond, c'est qu'est-ce qu'on veut donner, c'est des ressources, des services, des programmes, des ateliers, des événements qui nous permettent de pas seulement survivre, mais de prospérer dans ce monde qui est constamment en train de violenter de manière systémique nos identités et qui nous sommes. Donc, c'est vraiment d'offrir cette voie, cette opportunité, cette place pour notre communauté. Donc, voilà.
Tout comme C'est la vie, Fruition vise à combler le fossé entre les communautés francophones et anglophones. D'après ce que je comprends, vous avez été en mesure de le faire assez efficacement. Quel est votre secret?
Dans les membres de Fruition, on est vraiment des membres qui sont pas mal tous bilingues. Pour nous, c'est vraiment le franglais, là, c'est vraiment quelque chose qui est comme très courant et important pour nous, qu'on s'exprime de la manière qui vient juste le plus naturellement. Fait que si ta phrase commence en anglais, mais qu'elle finit en français, puis que ça, pour toi, c'est naturel, ben
On a compris.
on a compris, puis on encourage encourage vraiment ça. Puis c'est vraiment important pour nous de faire en sorte que chacun de nos événements a ce genre de disponibilité-là. Que ça soit qu'à la fin de la journée sur Zoom, c'est moi ou Kat ou une autre personne dans Fruition qui va écrire genre des petites traductions pour que le monde comprenne, ou que la personne qui fait le workshop, l'atelier, parle en franglais, que tu sais, comme change des deux langues. On veut vraiment ça, tu sais, comme on a plein de panels où c'est littéralement ça qui arrive, que c'est pas un panneau qui est fait spécifiquement en anglais ou un panneau qui est fait spécifiquement en français, c'est qu'il y a juste vraiment les deux partout. Puis si la personne en tant que telle connaît juste une des deux langues, on fait de notre possible pour traduire en même temps. Puis on fait aussi toujours notre possible pour que chacun de nos publications sur nos pages de réseaux sociaux sont toujours en français et en anglais. Puis c'est ça, on essaie toujours de juste être vraiment comme, de toujours se pousser avec de l'inclusivité de la langue française.
Vous m'avez dit quelque chose qui était vraiment éclairant. C'est l'idée que la langue française, de par la nature de sa genèse, est intrinsèquement exclusive aux personnes non-binaires. Parlez-moi en plus.
Ben, tu le vois dans juste la nature masculin ou féminin de la langue française. Même quand tu es une personne non-binaire, puis tu veux déclarer à ta communauté que, OK, pour que vous vous référez à moi, je veux que vous utilisez les pronoms « yel ». Par exemple, dans la langue française, techniquement, les pronoms « yel », c'est ni masculin ni féminin, mais la langue française oblige que même si tu as décidé d'utiliser ces pronoms non-binaires-là, il faut quand même que tu choisisses entre le masculin et le féminin pour tes adjectifs, pour tes accords. Donc, est-ce qu'on dit que cette personne est beau ou est-ce qu'on dit que cette personne est belle? Donc, ça oblige, même si tu as décidé que toi, en tant qu'être humain, tu es non-binaire, puis on ne veut pas qu'on te voit dans un cadre de masculin ou féminin, il faut quand même, si tu navigues dans un monde où le monde parle français, il faut que tu choisisses. Puis c'est cette obligation de choisir qui est un peu oppressif. Il y a des façons de faire, il y a des personnes qui sont en train de trouver des moyens de passer à travers ça, mais c'est tellement ancré dans la langue qu'à ce point, on ne peut pas vraiment le changer.
Eh bien, vous êtes des inspirateurs qui continueront de rendre notre province de plus en plus inclusive pour tout. Et merci beaucoup à vous deux pour ça.
Il n'y a pas de trouble. C'est juste pratiquez-vous. You know, and juste écoutez les gens. For real. Si c'est pas quelque chose, assis-toi puis écoute.
C'est pas difficile. C'est pas difficile.
Et voilà, c'est ça. Écoutez les gens, c'est pas difficile. Et avant de partir, Naika, s'il te plaît, parlez-nous du chanson qu'on va entendre.
Donc, la chanson que vous allez entendre, c'est la chanson de Moon and You de mon album Solo, qui est dans mon album que j'ai lancé le 1er janvier 2020, donc la journée de l'indépendance d'Haïti. Donc, ça s'appelle Painted Imageries. C'est sur toutes les plateformes, Tidal, Bandcamp, Spotify, tout le kit, mais achetez-le sur Bandcamp parce que j'ai plus de revenus là-dessus. Puis,
Ouais,
c'est ça.
ouais.
Merci beaucoup.
Mais c'est fantastique. Et voici The Moon and You.
Sometimes I feel the cold breeze of your stare. Sometimes I trace the whispers that lay there in the corners of your heart. I fold them down, pocket their sounds to carry them all around me. And your voice drips water in my rearview mirror, a soothing tea for a Sunday weather. But I don't think I could be what you want me to be. But I don't think that the moon could ever outshine your bloom. I got a sense we could walk through the light, hold you down at night, caress your thighs. Got the pictures of my reality carved out in my memory. I'll try and consider me the colorless tapestry. You bring out the best in me, but the songs of the birds don't reach the sea. So I don't think I could be what you want me to be. But I don't think that the moon could ever outshine your bloom. But if I'm being honest, I wanna bask in your glory. I wanna swim in your story and savor all that there is to see. But if I'm being honest, I wanna bask in your glory. I wanna swim in your story and savor all that there is to see. But if I'm being honest, I wanna bask in your glory. I wanna swim in your story and savor all there is to see. But if I'm being honest, I wanna bask in your glory. I wanna swim in your story and savor all there is to see. 'Cause I don't think that the moon could ever outshine your bloom. I don't think it ever will.
Wow, okay, that settles it. My favorite thing about Montreal has to be the people. Anyway, thanks for flying with us today, everyone, and make sure to book your ticket for next time on C'estLaViePod.com. Franco, what you got? Pas grand-chose, là, mais c'est Québec ici, et c'est ici, Québec.
Never give up the battle.